What is ecology? Organisms and their environment. So the big question is, what is ecology? Ecology is the study of the interactions that take place between organisms and their environment. Ecology also explains how living organisms affect each other and the world that they live in. Two important vocabulary words for us to understand when speaking of ecology is habitat and niche. Remember, CH has a K sound in Latin, and most science words are Latin or Greek. Your habitat is going to be the place where an animal or plant lives. For example, Sage lives, his habitat would be our classroom, which is now my house. A niche is going to be the organism's total way of life. I've seen some textbooks describe a niche as like a job, but it's a little bit more complex than that, because your niche is not only the organism's job, but it's the relationships that it has with various organisms in the environment and non-living things. While we're speaking of non-living things, the non-living environment is important. We have what we call abiotic factors, which are going to be the non-living parts of an organism's environment. Remember, in Latin, a means not. So when we put a in front of bio, which is living, abiotic or abio means not living. Examples of abiotic factors include air currents, temperature, moisture, light, and soil. Now, the abiotic factors can affect an organism's way of life. So let's think about what's going on right now. The reason why we're not going to school is because we've had an outbreak of COVID-19. The abiotic factor would actually be the virus, because for right now, scientists have classified viruses as non-living. Okay? So this abiotic factor has caused us not to be able to go to school and spend time with each other. Now, some of you may be excited about that. Others of you are realizing really quickly that being at home is slightly boring. The living environment is also important, and we call the living environment the biotic factors. So those are going to be all of the living organisms that inhabit an environment. Some examples of those, of course, are us. All organisms depend on each other either directly or indirectly for food, shelter, reproduction, or protection. So, let's play a game. Abiotic or biotic? What do you think? It's an anglerfish. I would go with biotic as well. How about the next one? Abiotic or biotic? We have a tornado, so that would be some air currents. I'd say abiotic. I agree. Abiotic or biotic? And specifically, we're talking about the rock in the water, not what's in the water, not the bacteria that might be on the rock. What is it? Abiotic. Abiotic or biotic? Sea cucumbers. Yep, biotic. Now, in ecology, we have levels of organization. Actually, in all science, we have levels of organization. And so you may be familiar with this when we spoke about, the cell being the smallest form of a living, the smallest part of a living thing. Okay. All right. And there are some organisms that are one cell or unicellular. So the simplest, we start off actually with the atom level, and a physicist will argue that you really should start off with quarks, which make up subatomic particles, which make up atoms, which make up molecules, and then an organelle, and then your cell, tissue, organ, system, and then organism. So ecologists have organized the interactions an organism takes part in into different levels according to complexity. So complexity just means how difficult it may be, or you can't really define the word with the word like complex because that makes no sense. Okay, so the first level of organization is going to be your organism. So an organism is an individual living thing that's made up of cells, uses energy, reproduces, responds, grows, and develops. The second level is going to be a population. So a population is going to be a group of organisms that are all the same species which interbreed and live in the same place at the same time. Okay? The third level is going to be your community. So your community, and some scientists actually have typed it as biological community to differentiate it between the community you may see in social studies. But a biological community, is going to be all of the populations of different species that live in the same place at the same time. So this particular picture, we have an acacia tree. Okay, we have some wildebeest, we have some zebra, we have a population of grass, because this is located on the savanna, and if the picture was probably wider, you would probably see giraffes, maybe a pride of lions, but that would be a community. The fourth level of your organization is going to be an ecosystem. So your ecosystem are going to include the populations of plants, animals, any living thing that interacts with each other in a given area, and all of the abiotic components of that area. And so ecosystems can be either terrestrial, which means land-based, or aquatic. So in this particular picture, we have the sun becomes part of the ecosystem, the air, any type of moisture that is located within that particular savanna would be part of the ecosystem, the soil, and that sort of thing. The fifth level of organization is going to be the biosphere, and that's just going to be the portion of Earth that supports life. Now, prior to us departing, you did do an ecological flip book, and we had biome on there. The reason why I did not include biome right here is because biomes are similar to ecosystems. We'll get more into that, but they have so many things that are in common with each other that we can kind of use them interchangeably. So the biosphere is going to be where life is found in the air, on land, in fresh water, and in salt water. The biosphere is going to be the portion of Earth that supports living things. The biosphere is located in the troposphere. And if you remember anything from last year when you guys were in Dr. Spurley's class or in your 6th grade Earth Science class, remember our troposphere is where weather happens. All the cool stuff that makes Earth happens in the troposphere. So the biosphere is part of the troposphere. So what level of organization is Simba? He's an organism, and he's an adorable one at that. Okay, so now we're at Pride Rock. What level of organization? We have the different organisms, and that would be your community. Okay, level of organism, Simba and his mom. Population, because it's 2. Okay, so that concludes the lesson on what is ecology. Hopefully you found this helpful. Of course, if I was you, I would write it down. Remember, you can pause this recording at any time, but if you have any questions or comments or concerns,